Hi, my name is Ashley, and I am an activist from Houston. I'm just going to do a really brief video really quickly. I wanted to document some really important things. I am a victim of a new form of crime where a high-tech terrorist organization has been remotely torturing and terrorizing me for many years. I am trying to fight to get my government to address this crime and get these high-tech criminals away from me. I'm going to take these off. But the reason why I am wearing these earplugs is because the high-tech criminals have the ability to transmit their sound in my environment. And so being that I spend a substantial amount of time alone, what they do is they have the ability to communicate from midair, but they also have some advanced sound technology. More than likely, it's some type of ultrasound technology or some type of ambient scatter technology that gives them the ability to be able to not only talk in midair, but also they can intercept television and radio signals and just any kind of sound in general. Anyway, what I am working on at this point is I am in the process of constructing a detail of events. Something's in my eye, excuse me, where I talk about this crime and I talk a little bit about the technical part of it, but also the psychological and physical torture. I'm going to compile that, but I'm also going to talk a little bit about my story because I think it's a little bit unique. I'll show you some of the things that I am doing, and it's probably a couple of pages of notes of scribble scrabble. But I'll just kind of show you. I'm writing stuff down, just, details and that kind of thing. But the interesting thing about this is that when this crime first began for me, my ex-husband left me mysteriously December 12th, 2008. That's also when the high-tech criminals came in and began terrorizing me. The thing about it is when these high-tech criminals first began talking to me remotely, and they were antagonizing me, they were basically trying to intimidate me and extort me. They told me if I didn't get out of my ex-husband's house, that they were going to ruin my life. They were going to do all of this stuff to me and I would be sorry. At the time, I really didn't have anywhere to go, and I felt like I didn't have to be pushed around. So, as a result of my defiance, as they like to call it, they have been raping and torturing me for many years. But being that a large part of this crime involves these high-tech criminals' use of, their knowledge and experience in brainwashing and psychological torture, they were actually able to, just really toy with me in the early stages of this crime. They were able to, just really use guilt and use, shame and just use anything that they could tamper with my life and my emotional state with. At that time, I was very fragile. I was a very different person, very reserved, very, soft-spoken. I was a Christian. I wasn't perfect, and I could be a jerk just like anyone else, but I really held myself to a higher standard because I was trying to be a woman of God, and I was looking forward to, living a good life. Anyway, in the process of, that time, these high-tech criminals definitely sent me through just an emotional roller coaster. My ex-husband didn't want to be with me. That was his choice. But these high-tech criminals actually used that situation to really fuck with me emotionally and psychologically. I'll talk a lot about that when I am constructing my detail of events. But as of right now, while I am trying to document all of the things that occurred or led up to that time many years ago, what the high-tech criminals were doing, I realize now, is they were actually embedding triggers, psychological triggers. The reason that I know this is because for many, many years in the early parts of this crime, anytime that I would attempt to talk about or think about my ex-husband, these high-tech criminals would actually beat me with such force. And this is, we'll say it's a little bit more force in the top and center of my head. They would just beat me with the energy weapon, and it had a lot of impact, a lot of pressure. It wasn't your standard, like, burning of my skin that they do with the energy weapon. It was actual force and pressure to where it would bring me down, and I would just have to stay there until they stopped. And for the first 2 years, the group of remote criminals who, I don't know, who came in remotely and began terrorizing me, they basically tortured me for years concurrently. And, any time that I actually thought about my ex-husband, or anytime I mentioned his name, they would beat me in my head with the energy weapon. The interesting thing about this crime is that it's not just these high-tech criminals violating my privacy by listening into my home or my private conversations, or hacking my phone, or intercepting television signals, or even intercepting radio signals. These high-tech criminals have some sophisticated brain-computer interface, or brain-to-brain interface technology that gives them the ability to be able to actually sync directly in the brain. I was reading an article today where a writer basically stated that brain-computer interface is still in development. Scientists are still working on decoding brain activity. They kind of know how to do it, but they're still working on it. That's a lie. These high-tech terrorists that have been torturing and raping me, they have brain-computer interface technology, and it allows them to actually sync in with the human brain remotely. They have found a way to be able to decode the brain activity into a form that is just as accurate as Google speech to text. So, word for word and thought for thought, they have technology that can actually translate brain activity into a text or audible form. Naturally, that's a very profitable thing. And naturally, I'm sure these high-tech terrorists are not willing to just give that up. Or even admit that they are operating that kind of technology, but it violates human rights. Anyway, as I am sitting here trying to draft, the important details about the early parts of this crime, they are, really just emotionally bringing back that state, that pain that I experienced. And the interesting thing about it is it was so debilitating that I had to stop. I had to stop writing. I had to get up because I couldn't breathe. The trauma that I have experienced just kind of really hit me today in that moment when I was writing about what happened in the early parts of this crime. These high-tech criminals, for some reason, don't like me to make references to my ex-husband. They definitely don't like me to write about him or talk about him, or even, say anything related to him. I know why, but I really don't want to touch on that right now. What I do know is that these high-tech terrorists have, been assaulting me, have been terrorizing me for many, many years. And as much as it's easy to blame this person and that person, what I do know is that they are a very powerful organization, and they have the ability to intimidate anyone into anything. Most people who are aware of the crime are aware of the remote criminals know that the first rule of thumb is that you don't talk about them, you ignore them. If you do talk about them, there are consequences. They can ruin your career, they can ruin your family, they can ruin your body, they can even kill you. And I'm evident of that because that's what they're doing to me slowly. And so in essence, I really want to keep the focus on, the crime that's being committed by the group of advanced hackers that are violating human rights and what they do, because their goal is to, divert attention from them and to direct their victims to someone or something local that allows their victims to be perceived as crazy or, to really just take the focus off of the big picture. The big picture is, I know that these high-tech criminals, the individuals that are committing this act of terrorism against me and many others, are in the business of crime. So that means they are willing to say and do anything. That means that they will use anything in an individual's environment, any type of interpersonal relationship, any type of association, any type of experience, whether good and bad, and they will distort it so that the individual, myself, and other victims will focus on that one thing and become fixated. And if that happens, then the big picture is missed, which is, hey, there's a terrorist organization. They have advanced energy weapons. They have brain-computer interface. They are violating not only my privacy, but your privacy and everyone else. They're involved in sexual exploitation of women, children. They're engaging in terrorism in America. They're involved in a new form of black market sex trade. And more importantly, they are not only just violating private individuals, they are violating government. They are able to listen in on government businesses, government meetings. They are aware of all secrets because they have technology that gives them the ability to be able to listen in to an environment remotely. This advanced crime that's being committed is one that puts our sovereignty in jeopardy, meaning everybody in the United States. These types of criminals seem to think that they can engage in these domestic acts of terrorism, and all they have to do is make their victim look crazy, or all they have to do is to remain discreet and pick a particular type of victim in order to ensure that their crime doesn't get addressed. And that has worked for a long period of time, but it's time for that to stop working. When I look at my baby nephew's face, I don't want him to ever have to experience being a victim. I don't want him to ever have to have his choices or his decisions or his dreams affected or impacted. I don't want him to ever to have to be worried about a group of high-tech criminals that can rape him in his sleep and that can, affect his behavior. This level of crime is so dangerous because the high-tech criminals are able to disconnect themselves because they are using high-tech advanced technology as their primary way of committing the crime. Anyway, I just was thinking about a couple of things. I wanted to share them. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.